Hello again and welcome back to our course on PSE 15. In this section I'm going to get you started on guided editing. If you've used guided editing in PSE before, you probably don't need to cover this introductory section, but note that I will be covering one or two of the new guided edits in subsequent sections, so I suggest you keep an eye open for those. It's quite often the case on PSE courses that people start with guided editing because it can give you a pretty good feel for the kinds of things that you can do with Photoshop Elements. I tend to wait a little though and get some of the basics of quick editing and expert editing in place, because with guided editing I think you understand what's going on a lot more and appreciate what's going on a lot more if you have a good basic knowledge of those other modes. Now when you select guided editing in PSE 15, you are offered a whole range of guided edits. Now these guided edits are in categories, so you have what are called the basics, color, black and white, fun edits, special edits and photo merge. And in each category you have a number of possibilities. Let's go back to basics. Each of these panels shows you a before and after for the particular guided edit. So for instance, if I go to the one over on the right here, lighten and darken, that is the before. If I move the cursor across, that's the after. And you can see how the lighting in that image is being affected by my guided edit. With a guided edit, you're given a sort of recipe to follow, a workflow really, and although you have a number of choices to make as you go along, pretty much the map of what you need to do is laid out in front of you. And one of the points we'll come back to later on, which is very important to bear in mind, is that although sometimes when you're using guided edits everything seems to be happening by magic, and it all seems quite different from what you've learnt so far in relation to quick editing and expert editing, in fact you're only using the same tools and techniques. They're just presented to you in a particularly helpful way. Another important point to bear in mind is that many people use guided editing for a while and then decide that that's all they're ever going to need. They realize that the things that they need or want to do to their images are all covered by guided edits, and there's not really a need to spend the time and trouble on learning expert editing. I hope that won't be the case for you, because I think with expert editing you can do such fantastic things and with such flexibility that you wouldn't really want to be constrained by guided editing. Having said that, if time is short, if you're only prepared to spend a certain amount of time on improving and enhancing and fixing your images, then guided editing is definitely an option to look at. Something that's happened, I think, in virtually every version of PSE since it started is that more guided edits have been introduced. One or two have been taken out, but certainly overall the number has increased, and this time there are several new guided edits as well. I'm going to concentrate on one or two very simple guided edits to begin with, just to get you the general idea, and then later on I'll look at one or two of the guided edits that have been introduced in this version. If you want to see many other worked examples of guided edits, you can look at the PSE courses for earlier versions, which are on Simon Says IT, and of course there are quite a few examples worked through on the Adobe website. So there are quite a few sources for you to check out if you want to see other guided edits in action. Let's start with a very straightforward example. If you remember with exercise 5, we straightened the picture of a ferry. I've selected the picture in the photo bin down there. I'm looking at the basic guided edits and I'm going to select rotate and straighten. There's the before picture, the exercise 5 before picture. You can see that we're in guided edit. We have a very limited range of tools in guided edit, just the zoom and the hand. But on the right we have the instructions, if you like, the recipe for this particular guided edit. At the top of the panel on the right we have a reset button, and we also have help from this little question mark icon. This is rotate and straighten, so I've got a pair of rotate buttons, basically do the same job that the ones on the bar at the bottom do. For straighten, basically the options are pretty much the same as they are if you use the tool in expert mode, but they're very straightforward to apply in this case. So if, for example, I decided I wanted to maintain the canvas size and autofill the edges. Once it's done the rotation and I've got some empty corners, check the checkbox autofill edges, and then all I need to do is to click straighten tool. Draw my line as before. That's the horizon. Release the mouse. And there we are, straightened and filled. Note the slightly irregular bit of brickwork in the bottom left hand corner, although I don't think even the people that know this particular ferry and this particular harbour would notice that particular blemish. When I'm happy with the results, bear in mind I can revert if I'm not, click on next, and I'm given the options to save or save as. I can continue editing in quick mode or in expert mode, or I can share what I've done on Facebook, Flickr or Twitter. I'll talk about sharing some more a little bit later on. And when I've finished, I just click on done. So guided editing really is as straightforward as that. I'm going to go through one more example. This is another one of the guided edits that's been around for a good while. And then I'm going to, in subsequent sections, look at a couple of the new guided edits. But fundamentally with guided edits, with the help of the PDF, with the help of the online examples, and any old examples you look at in previous versions of this course, I really think you should spend a little bit of time going through each of the guided edits, getting used to what they do, trying out the different tools and techniques. And I really think you'll find that guided edit, even if ultimately it's not the way you're going to do things, it gives you some great ideas on how to do things and the sort of things that you can do as well. I'm going to select the picture which is the leftmost one in the photo bin. It's actually a picture of what's called the Ring of Brodgar, which is a very, very old stone circle ring in the Orkney Islands in the UK. And what I'm going to do is to click on black and white guided edits. And I'm going to choose line drawing. This particular guided edit includes 3 steps, and the first step can be applied multiple times. The first step is to take the photographic image and apply a pencil sketch effect. Let me just click the button once to do that. And as you can see, it's done a pretty good job of making that look as though somebody has sketched the scene with a pencil. If I click again, look carefully at what happens. The effect now is a much fainter one, as though somebody has quite deliberately represented this scene very faintly with a pencil sketch. Sometimes when you're trying these things out for the first time, you don't know whether it's going to be more or less intense if you do something multiple times. And indeed some of these effects do get more intense, some of them get less intense. So really you do need to try some of these things out to see how repeated effects do actually impact the look of an image. I'm going to revert in this case, back to the start again. I'm just going to apply the pencil sketch effect once. The second step is to adjust the layer opacity. Now this will become clearer later on, but the way that PSE is doing this is by creating a number of layers, and one of the layers is the layer with all the original colours still in it. And what I'm going to do is, by clicking on this button, let a little bit of that colour show through. It still looks like a pencil sketch, but it looks as though it's been done with coloured pencils. I think it looks rather nice, really. And then the third effect is to make the lines in the drawing darker. Click on levels, look at the lines, particularly on the biggest stone that you can see there. You see how the lines are that little bit darker, just giving a more sort of dramatic effect to them. So that's the pencil sketch effect on the Ring of Brodgar. As before, we click on next. You can save, you can go into quick mode editing, go into expert editing, or you can share your new creation. When I've finished, click on done. That's the end of this section. I'll see you in the next one.